The Frontier's Edge, a rugged mining vessel built to withstand the unforgiving reaches of deep space, drifted quietly amidst the endless black. Its dull, metallic hull bore the scars of countless missions, its once sleek frame now marred by dents and patches of reinforced plating. To an outsider, the ship looked worn and tired, but to Captain Kara Mercer and her crew, it was home. Kara peered out the viewport, her gaze fixed on the asteroid floating silently before them. It was unlike any other they had encountered in their years of mining operations. It was vast and jagged, its dark surface glimmering faintly under the ship's lights. Strange, unnatural patterns swirled across its exterior, like veins pulsating with some unknown energy. "What do you make of it, Doug?" she asked, not taking her eyes off the asteroid. Chief Engineer Doug Graves squinted at the readings on his console. The burly, grizzled man scratched his stubbled chin thoughtfully. "I'll be damned if I've ever seen anything like it. Scanners are going haywire. It's giving off some kind of electromagnetic interference. But it's not just static. It's rhythmic, almost like—" "A heartbeat?" suggested Medic Lena Ortega softly, her dark eyes wide as she leaned over Doug's shoulder. She shivered slightly, brushing her long black hair out of her face. "I'm telling you, Kara, this thing is giving me the creeps." "Everything gives you the creeps, Lena," Doug grumbled, though his tone lacked its usual bite. He tapped a few more buttons, frowning as the console sputtered in response. "But I have to admit, something's off. It's almost like it's reacting to us." Kara sighed, stepping back from the viewport. The rest of the crew, the dozen or so miners and technicians scattered throughout the ship, were seasoned professionals, but she knew how quickly rumors and paranoia could spread in the isolation of deep space. One wrong move, and they'd have a full-blown panic on their hands. "All right, listen up," Kara announced, raising her voice. "We're here to extract resources, not play archaeologist. If it's valuable, we'll mine it. If it's not, we leave it behind. No heroics. Doug, Lena, suit up. You're with me on this one. We're going down to take a closer look." "Wait, you're going in person?" Doug's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Captain, that's not protocol. We should send a drone first. We don't know what's down there." "We don't have time to babysit, Doug," Kara shot back. "We're behind schedule as it is. The faster we figure out what this is, the faster we can get back on track." Doug grumbled something under his breath but didn't argue further. Lena just looked uneasy, clutching her medical scanner tightly as she followed Kara and Doug to the airlock. The rest of the crew watched them go, murmuring quietly among themselves. Kara ignored them. They needed strong leadership now, not hesitation. As the airlock cycled and the three of them stepped out onto the asteroid's surface, Kara's helmet display adjusted, overlaying data and environmental readings across her visor. The asteroid's gravity was weaker than expected, making each step feel light and unnatural. She could see the faint glow of the veins crisscrossing the rock, pulsating gently, almost as if the asteroid itself were alive. "This is insane," Lena whispered over the comms, her voice tinged with awe. "There's no way this is natural. It's beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way." "Keep it together, Lena," Doug muttered, though he sounded distracted too. "Kara, I'm getting all sorts of strange readings from the core. It's hollow in there." "Focus on the task," Kara ordered. "What do you mean hollow?" "See for yourself," Doug replied, gesturing to a nearby rock face. A section of the asteroid appeared smoother, its surface lined with sharp geometric patterns that glowed faintly under their lights. "It's almost like a door. If I didn't know better, I'd say it was man-made," Kara finished, staring at the structure. "But who could have built it, and why?" "Does it matter?" Doug shook his head. "We should leave it alone. This isn't our business, Captain. We're miners, not—" "We're miners who need to get paid," Kara interrupted sharply. "And if there's something valuable inside, we're going to find it. Doug, can you cut through?" Doug hesitated, then sighed. "Yeah, I can. Stand back." He set his tools against the smooth rock face, and the beam cutter hummed to life, its bright arc slicing through the surface with a hiss. The rock sizzled and cracked under the intense heat, and after a few tense moments, A jagged entrance appeared before them. Doug stepped back, panting slightly from the effort. "There," he muttered. "But I'm telling you, Kara, this is a bad idea." "We're already committed," Kara said firmly. "Let's move." They stepped cautiously through the breach, their lights piercing the darkness beyond. The interior was even stranger than the exterior. Vast, echoing chambers lined with the same glowing veins. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, and Kara's skin prickled as if 1,000 invisible eyes were watching them. "What the hell is this place?" Doug murmured, shining his light across the chamber walls. Strange symbols, unlike anything they had seen, seemed to pulse and shift as they moved. "Some kind of containment chamber?" Lena suggested uneasily. "Maybe it was built to hold something." "If that's true, then where is it now?" Kara asked, her voice low. Captain. "I think I found it," Doug whispered. Kara turned, and her breath caught. In the center of the chamber stood a crystalline structure, unlike any mineral or gem she'd ever seen. It was massive, towering above them like a monolith, its surface smooth and polished, shimmering with a dark inner light. And at its core, something seemed to writhe and pulse, like a living heartbeat trapped in stone. "That's not right," Lena breathed, her voice trembling. "That's not right at all." "Captain, we should get out of here," Doug urged, stepping back. "Seal this place up and never look back." But it was too late. With a sudden, deafening crack, the crystal split open, spilling a thick, dark substance onto the chamber floor. It moved like a living thing, swirling and twisting as if tasting the air. Then, with terrifying speed, it surged forward, coiling around their legs like a serpent. "Get back!" Kara shouted, firing her plasma cutter at the writhing mass. The beam sliced through it, but the substance merely reformed, its dark tendrils reaching higher. "Doug, seal the breach!" she ordered, panic flaring in her chest. But Doug was frozen, his eyes wide with horror as the substance wrapped around his limbs. "Kara, it's inside my suit," he gasped, his voice choked with terror. "I can feel it. In my mind. It's... Doug!" Kara lunged forward, grabbing his arm, but it was too late. The black mass surged upward, enveloping his helmet, and Doug's scream cut off abruptly as his visor went dark. Lena was shouting, firing her own plasma cutter wildly as the substance turned toward her, but Kara barely heard it. Her mind was racing, thoughts spiraling. What was this thing? Where had it come from? How could it? And then, as quickly as it had started, the substance recoiled, retreating into the crystal's shattered core. The chamber fell silent once more, save for the harsh sound of Lena's panicked breathing. "Doug," Kara whispered, staring at the motionless figure beside her. The dark tendrils had vanished, leaving his body slumped and lifeless. "Kara, what do we do?" Lena's voice was barely audible, shaking with fear. Kara swallowed hard, forcing herself to think. "We get back to the ship. We regroup. We figure this out." But as they turned to leave, Kara couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. That whatever they had released wasn't just a creature. It was inside them now, and it was just getting started. The frontier's edge was quiet as a tomb when Kara and Lena stumbled back through the airlock. The only sound was the hum of the engines and the low murmur of the ship's life support systems. But it felt different now, oppressive, suffocating. Kara could almost feel the weight of the creature's presence hanging in the air around them, like a dark cloud waiting to descend. Lena collapsed against the bulkhead, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "What? What the hell was that, Kara?" she whispered, clutching at her helmet as if she could scrub away the memory of what they had seen. "Doug is dead. He's dead. And—" "Get a hold of yourself," Kara snapped, though her own voice was tight with fear. She felt like screaming, but she couldn't afford to lose control. Not now. Not in front of the rest of the crew. "We need to stay calm and think. Whatever that thing was, it's still down there. We're not going to let it take anyone else." Lena nodded shakily, her hands trembling as she fumbled with her helmet's release latch. Okay, but what if it's not just down there? What if it... It's contained, Kara interrupted, more to reassure herself than Lena. We sealed the breach when we left. It can't follow us up here. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. That thing, whatever it was, had gotten into Doug's suit, into his mind. It had spoken to him, twisted him somehow before he... She shook her head violently, forcing the thought away. She couldn't afford to dwell on what had happened. She had to keep moving, keep thinking. Lena, we need to get the rest of the crew together. We'll isolate ourselves until we're sure no one else is infected. Run a full diagnostic on your suit. Make sure there's no trace of that stuff. Lena nodded again, but her eyes were wide and unfocused, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. Kara grabbed her by the shoulders, forcing her to look her in the eye. Lena, listen to me, she said firmly. We're going to get through this, but I need you with me. Can you do that? After a long moment, Lena swallowed hard and nodded. Yeah, I'm with you. Good. Kara released her, stepping back. Let's move. They made their way to the central hub, where the rest of the crew was gathered. The moment they entered, a dozen pairs of eyes turned toward them, faces etched with confusion and worry. What happened out there, Captain? Called Hank, the lead miner, his bushy eyebrows furrowed with concern. He was a stocky, broad-shouldered man with a thick beard and a no-nonsense attitude that had made him one of Kara's most trusted crew members. But now, even he looked shaken. We heard Doug scream and then... nothing. What's going on? Kara took a deep breath, glancing around the room. They needed the truth, but not all of it. Not yet. There was an accident, she said slowly, choosing her words carefully. Doug didn't make it. A murmur of shock rippled through the room. Some of the miners exchanged nervous glances, others swore softly under their breath. Only Hank stepped forward, his expression hardening. What kind of accident, Captain? He demanded. What aren't you telling us? Kara met his gaze evenly. We found something down there. Some kind of organism. It attacked Doug, and we barely managed to get out alive. Whatever it is, it's dangerous. I need everyone to stay calm and follow protocol. No one leaves this room until we've run a full medical check. Hank stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You heard the captain, he said gruffly, turning to the others. No one moves. Let's get those checks started. The crew murmured in agreement, but Kara could see the unease simmering just beneath the surface. They were scared. Hell, she was scared. But she couldn't let it show. Not now. Lena worked quickly, her hands shaking only slightly as she scanned each crew member with the handheld medical scanner. One by one, the readings came back clear. No foreign contaminants, no anomalies. No trace of the dark, writhing substance that had taken Doug. But when she reached Kara, the scanner let out a soft, almost imperceptible beep. Lena froze, her eyes widening. What is it? Kara demanded, her heart skipping a beat. Lena hesitated, glancing around nervously before lowering her voice. There's something in your blood, she whispered. It's faint, barely detectable, but it's there, Kara finished grimly. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. Okay, what does that mean? I don't know, Lena admitted, her voice trembling. It could be residual contamination from the airlock. Or it could mean that I'm infected too, Kara said quietly. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The hum of the engines, the murmur of the crew, even the very air around them seemed to freeze. Captain? Hank's voice broke the silence. What's going on? Kara turned to face him, her expression hardening. I'm fine, she said firmly. It's just a precaution. Keep the crew contained until we're sure. No one leaves this room. Understood? Hank nodded slowly, though his eyes lingered on her for a moment longer, suspicion and worry flickering across his face. We'll be fine, Hank, she added, trying to sound confident. Just keep everyone calm. We'll get through this. But as she turned away, she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflective surface of a nearby console. Her face looked pale and drawn, her eyes dark and hollow. And for just a split second, she thought she saw something move behind her eyes, a flicker of darkness, a ripple of shadow. She blinked, and it was gone. Kara's heart pounded in her chest as she hurried to the medbay, Lena close behind. "What the hell is happening to me?" she whispered, more to herself than to Lena. We need to run more tests," Lena said shakily, her hands fluttering nervously as she activated the medbay's diagnostic equipment. "We need to figure out what this thing is, how it's spreading, how—" "Lena." Kara's voice was sharp, cutting through Lena's panic. "Focus. Whatever this is, we're going to beat it. We just need to stay calm and figure it out." Lena took a deep breath, nodding slowly. Okay, I'm calm. I'm calm." Kara lay down on the diagnostic bed, her thoughts racing as Lena hooked her up to the various monitors and sensors. She could feel the cold, metallic touch of the electrodes against her skin, the hum of the machines as they whirred to life. The screen above her flickered, displaying a series of complex readouts and graphs. Blood pressure, heart rate, neural activity, everything looked normal. Except, "There," Lena whispered, pointing to a small, almost invisible anomaly on the neural scan. "It's in your brain, Kara. It's like a shadow almost. I don't know how else to describe it." Kara stared at the screen, her heart pounding. "Can you remove it?" Lena shook her head helplessly. "I don't even know what it is. It's not like a parasite or a tumor. It's just there. Like a presence," Kara finished softly. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. "Lena, if it's in my mind, then that means it's affecting my thoughts, my decisions." Lena swallowed hard, nodding. "It's possible, but I don't think it's fully integrated yet. It's weak, barely detectable. You're still you." "For now," Kara murmured. She opened her eyes, meeting Lena's gaze. "But if that changes, if I start acting strange, or if I—" "Kara, no." Lena's voice was fierce, her eyes blazing. "You're stronger than this thing. You're not going to let it take you." But even as she said it, Kara could see the doubt in her eyes, the fear. Because deep down, they both knew the truth. It was already starting. The air on Frontier's edge felt thicker now, like a living thing pressing in on Kara and her crew. The fear had settled in, wrapping its tendrils around each of them, tightening its grip by the minute. As Kara sat in the dim glow of the medbay, staring at the diagnostic screen, she could feel it creeping up on her too. A dark, insidious presence at the edge of her thoughts, whispering things she couldn't quite hear. Lena worked silently beside her, fingers flying over the console, scanning the neural patterns again and again, desperate for answers. Kara knew it was futile. Whatever was inside her mind was beyond their science. But she let Lena try anyway, because as long as Lena was focused on the screen, she didn't have to face what was happening to Kara. "Anything?" Kara asked quietly, though she already knew the answer. Lena shook her head, her shoulders slumping in defeat. It's still there," she whispered. "But it's not. I don't think it's growing. It's just waiting." "Waiting for what?" Kara murmured, more to herself than Lena. She could feel it. The thing inside her mind. It wasn't just a shadow or a presence. It was alive. A consciousness, lurking in the corners of her thoughts, observing, learning. And every time she looked away, every time she let her guard down, it seemed to move a little closer. The intercom crackled to life, Hank's gruff voice filling the medbay. "Captain, you'd better get down here," he said. "We've got a problem." Kara sat up sharply, her heart leaping into her throat. "What kind of problem?" Hank hesitated. "It's Greg," he said finally. He's locked himself in the engine room, won't let anyone in. Keeps talking to himself." Kara felt a chill run down her spine. "Talking to himself? What's he saying?" "Hell if I know," Hank muttered. "But it's not right, Captain. He's not himself." Kara exchanged a worried glance with Lena, then swung her legs off the diagnostic bed, wincing as a wave of dizziness washed over her. "I'll be right there." "Kara, wait," Lena protested, grabbing her arm. "If Greg's infected, then we need to contain it," Kara said sharply. She shook off Lena's grip, her expression hardening. "Whatever this thing is, it's spreading. We can't let it take over the crew." Lena hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but be careful." "I will," Kara said grimly. But even as she said it, she felt the thing inside her mind stir. Just a flicker, a subtle shift in the shadows. Like it was laughing. She pushed the thought away and headed for the engine room, her pulse hammering in her ears. By the time she reached the lower decks, the tension was palpable. A small group of miners had gathered outside the engine room door, their faces pale and drawn. Hank stood at the front, his expression grim. "He's been in there for hours," he said as Kara approached. "Won't respond to comms, just keeps talking. It's starting to freak the guys out." Kara glanced at the closed door, her stomach twisting. She could hear it now, Greg's voice low and muttering, barely audible through the thick metal. She took a deep breath, then stepped forward and pressed the intercom button. "Greg, it's Captain Reynolds," she said calmly. "Open the door." There was a long pause, then Greg's voice crackled through the speaker, distorted and uneven. Captain?" he whispered. Is that you?" "Yes, Greg. It's me," Kara said softly. "What are you doing in there?" Another pause, then a strange, high-pitched laugh burst from the speaker. "Can't let them in, Captain. Can't let them see. They're watching, you know. Watching us. They see everything." Kara's heart clenched. "Who's watching, Greg?" "What are you talking about?" "Them," Greg hissed. The lights, the eyes. They're inside, Captain. Inside my head. I can see them, see through them. Everything's so clear now." "Greg, listen to me," Kara said, keeping her voice steady. "You need to let us in. We can help you." "No, no, no!" Greg's voice rose to a frantic pitch. "Can't let you in. Can't let you see. They'll take you too." Kara exchanged a worried glance with Hank, who shook his head slowly. "He's lost it, Captain," Hank muttered. "We need to get him out of there before he does something stupid." Kara nodded, then turned back to the intercom. "Greg, I'm going to override the door. Just stay calm, okay?" "No, Captain, please!" Greg cried, his voice breaking. Don't let them out, don't!" But it was too late. Kara keyed in the override code, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. The stench hit her first. A thick, acrid smell like burning metal mixed with something foul and rotting. She recoiled, covering her mouth, her eyes watering. The engine room was dark, the overhead lights flickering sporadically. And there, crouched in the center of the room, was Greg, or what was left of him. He was hunched over, his back to them, his body twitching and jerking in unnatural spasms. His hands, clawed and bloody, scratched at the floor, tracing strange, swirling patterns in the metal. His skin was pale and glistening with sweat, his hair matted and filthy. And when he turned to look at them, Kara felt her blood run cold. His eyes were wrong. The pupils were dilated, almost completely black, and there was a strange, eerie glow behind them, like some terrible light shining through a cracked window. "Kara," he whispered, his voice a rasping, broken sound. "You shouldn't be here." Kara took a step back, her heart pounding. "Greg, what happened to you?" But Greg only laughed, a high, keening sound that sent shivers down her spine. "You don't see it, do you?" he murmured. "The patterns, the truth. It's all connected. Everything. Every one. And they know, Kara. They know what you are." What I am," Kara echoed, her voice barely a whisper. Greg's gaze locked onto hers, his eyes boring into her with a terrible intensity. "They're inside you too," he whispered. "I can see it. The darkness. It's spreading, Kara. You can't stop it." Kara shook her head violently, refusing to listen. "No," she snapped. "You're infected. Whatever this is, it's messing with your mind. We can fix it. Fix it. Greg's laughter was a harsh, broken sound. Oh, Captain, there's no fixing this. They're already here. They're already inside. And soon you'll see. Before Kara could react, Greg lunged forward, his movements jerky and unnatural. Hank shouted, stepping in front of her, but Greg wasn't aiming for them. He was aiming for the engine controls. No! Kara screamed, but it was too late. Greg's hand slammed down on the control panel, and the ship lurched violently. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the engine room. The miners stumbled, swearing, as the entire ship seemed to shudder around them. What the hell did he do? Hank shouted, grabbing Kara's arm to steady her. Kara stared at the console, her heart racing. Greg's hand was still on the control panel, blood dripping from his fingers. His body convulsed once, twice, then went limp, crumpling to the floor. He's dead, Lena whispered, her voice trembling. Oh my God, Kara, he's... Focus! Kara snapped. She shoved Hank aside, her hands flying over the controls. We need to figure out what he did before. But before she could finish, the ship gave another violent shudder, and suddenly, everything went dark. The lights, the engines, the life support, all of it. Gone. They were drifting. Adrift in the cold, empty void of space. And they were not alone. Captain. Hank's voice was a low, terrified whisper. What the hell is happening? Kara stared at the console, her mind racing. The thing inside her stirred, a cold, creeping sensation spreading through her thoughts. We're in trouble, she whispered. And deep within the shadows of her mind, the creature laughed. Part 4. The Breaking Point. The darkness enveloped Frontier's edge like a suffocating shroud. Every panel and console aboard the ship remained dead, shrouded in shadows. The silence was broken only by the occasional groan of the hull, as it adjusted to the sudden shift in power. Kara and the remaining crew huddled in the corridor outside the engine room, their faces pale and strained in the glow of their emergency flashlights. No engines, no power. We're just... drifting, Hank muttered, staring blankly at the darkened walls. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, his fingers trembling. Greg took us offline. Why would he do that? Because he wasn't Greg anymore, Kara said softly, her voice tight. She could still see his eyes, those empty, glowing eyes, and feel the cold shiver of the creature lurking inside her own thoughts. Whatever Greg had become, it wasn't human. It wasn't anything she'd ever encountered before. Hank turned to her, his eyes wide with desperation. Then what the hell was he? I don't know, Kara admitted, but it's spreading. Whatever he unleashed, it's in the ship now. In us. She glanced at the remaining crew, Lena, Hank, and 2 miners, Malcolm and Davis, each of them wearing the same haunted, hollow look. We need to regain control, get the systems back online. We can't reboot the engines without power, Lena said quietly. Greg took the core offline. We'd need to restart it from the backup grid, but it's deep in the lower decks. No light, no oxygen. We'd be going in blind. Kara took a deep breath, steadying herself. Then that's where we go, she said firmly. We don't have a choice. If we stay here, drifting, whatever's inside us will take over. One by one. The crew shifted uneasily, exchanging wary glances. Malcolm cleared his throat nervously. Captain, what if it's already too late? What if we're just walking into a trap? We might be, Kara acknowledged. But we're not dead yet. She looked each of them in the eye, her gaze hard. I know you're scared. I am too. But we can't let this thing win. We can't let it turn us into that. She gestured toward the engine room, where Greg's lifeless body still lay sprawled across the controls. There was a long silence. Then Lena straightened, her jaw set with determination. I'm with you, Captain. Hank nodded slowly. Me too. The 2 miners exchanged a glance, then shrugged. We've come this far, Malcolm muttered. Might as well see it through. All right, Kara said softly. Then let's get suited up. They moved quickly, donning their EVA suits in the cramped confines of the storage locker. The suits were designed for external repairs, with reinforced plating and built-in oxygen tanks, but they'd serve well enough for the hazardous conditions in the lower decks. Kara's hands shook as she fastened the clasps on her helmet, her breath loud and hollow in the confined space of her visor. "We'll have to split up," she said, her voice echoing in her ears. "Hank, you and I will head to the power grid. Lena, you take Malcolm and Davis and check the comms array. If we can get a signal out, maybe we can call for help." "Assuming there's anyone left to call," Hank muttered. Kara ignored him. "We stick to the plan, stay in contact at all times, and if you start to feel anything, if you start to hear anything." She trailed off, glancing uneasily at Lena. "I know," Lena said quietly. "Same to you." With a final nod, they split into two groups and headed deeper into the ship. The corridors stretched out before them, long and dark, the only light coming from the weak glow of their flashlights. Shadows twisted and danced along the walls, the silence thick and oppressive. "Stay close," Kara murmured, as she and Hank crept through the maintenance hatch leading to the power grid. The air grew colder the deeper they went, the temperature dropping sharply as they descended into the bowels of the ship. "Don't let it get into your head," Hank grunted in response, his eyes darting nervously around them. "I'm more worried about what's already in there, Captain." Kara didn't answer. She could feel it too, the thing lurking at the edge of her thoughts, watching, waiting. She'd managed to keep it at bay so far, but she could sense it getting stronger, its presence more insistent. And every time she blinked, every time she let her guard down, she swore she saw movement in the corner of her vision. Shadows flickering and shifting in ways that defied reason. "Almost there," she whispered, as they rounded the final corner and emerged into the power grid chamber. The room was massive, filled with rows of humming machinery and thick cables snaking across the floor. At the far end, the backup power core sat dormant, a dark, looming shape in the shadows. "Let's get this over with," Hank muttered, his voice tight with tension. He moved to the control panel, his hands shaking as he keyed in the activation code. Kara stood beside him, her flashlight sweeping over the walls, every nerve on edge. A soft click echoed through the chamber as the core began to hum to life, the machinery groaning and shuddering around them. Kara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, relief flooding through her. "We did it," she murmured. But then the lights flickered. Just for a moment, but long enough for Kara to see it. A figure standing at the edge of the chamber, tall and shadowed, its eyes glowing with a cold, unnatural light. Her heart seized in her chest. "Hank," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Did you see?" But Hank wasn't listening. He was staring at the control panel, his expression blank, his eyes glazed over. "No," Kara breathed, stepping forward. "Hank, don't—" But before she could reach him, Hank's hands moved of their own accord, slamming down on the emergency override. The core let out a deafening roar, the lights blaring to life in a blinding flash. Kara stumbled back, her vision swimming as the machinery around them screamed in protest. "Hank!" she shouted, grabbing his arm. But he didn't respond. His gaze was locked on the console, his lips moving soundlessly. And then, as quickly as it had started, the lights dimmed, and the core went dark. The silence was absolute. Kara stood frozen, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her heart pounding. And then, slowly, Hank turned to look at her. "Kara?" he whispered, his voice faint. What happened?" "I don't know," she whispered back, her mind racing. You shut it down." "I did." Hank blinked, confusion flickering across his face. I don't remember." Kara's blood ran cold. The thing inside her mind stirred, its presence stronger now, more real. And as she stared at Hank, she saw it. The same shadowy flicker in his eyes, the same unnatural glow. "Hank," she said slowly, her voice shaking, Do you feel anything?" In your head? He frowned, raising a hand to his temple. I feel... He trailed off, his gaze unfocusing. Then his eyes widened, his breath hitching. Kara, he whispered. It's inside. She took a step back, her pulse racing. No, Hank, stay with me. We can... But it was too late. Hank's body convulsed, his hands clawing at his face, his breath coming in ragged gasps. And then, slowly, he looked up at her. And smiled. Hello, Captain. He purred, his voice twisted, alien. So nice to finally meet you. Kara staggered back, her blood turning to ice. This wasn't Hank. It wasn't even human. It was... It... Get out of him, she snarled, her hands shaking. Get out! Now! The thing in Hank's body chided softly. Don't be rude. We're just getting started. And then, with a flick of his hand, he lunged. Kara barely had time to react, her instincts screaming as she ducked under his arm and bolted for the door. She stumbled out into the corridor, her heart racing, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Lena! She gasped into her calm. Malcolm! Anyone! But there was no response, just static. And then, through the haze of her panic, she heard it. The sound of footsteps echoing down the darkened corridor. Something was coming. Something... worse. Kara sprinted through the darkened corridors of Frontier's Edge, her breath harsh and ragged in her helmet. Every corner, every shadow seemed to pulse with malevolent intent, her own heartbeat echoing in her ears like a war drum. Behind her, the thing wearing Hank's body moved with an unnatural grace, its footsteps light and mocking as it followed her through the ship. Running won't save you, Captain, it crooned softly, its voice drifting through the darkness. We are inevitable. We are everything. And soon you will be part of us. She ignored it, forcing herself to keep moving. Her only goal now was to get to the main control deck. If she could reach the central override, she could activate the ship's self-destruct system. If she couldn't save the crew, at least she could make sure this thing, whatever it was, never left the Frontier's Edge alive. But as she rounded a corner and skidded to a halt in front of the elevator, she knew she was running out of time. The doors were sealed shut, the control panel dark. With trembling hands, she fumbled with the emergency release, wrenching the access hatch open and clambering into the narrow maintenance shaft. You can't hide, Kara, the voice purred from somewhere below. We're already inside you. Don't you feel it? That pressure in your head? That little voice whispering at the back of your mind? Kara's hands slipped on the rungs, her vision blurring. She could feel it. Feel the thing creeping through her thoughts, wrapping itself around her will like a suffocating fog. Every step, every breath was a battle, her mind straining to keep control. But she couldn't stop. Couldn't let it win. She hauled herself up the shaft, her muscles burning, the cold metal biting into her gloves. The voice grew louder, more insistent, filling her mind with whispers. Just give in, it murmured, sweet and seductive. You're tired, scared, alone. Let us take the pain away. Let us make you whole. No, she gasped, shaking her head violently. Get out. You're not real. We're more real than you'll ever be. It hissed, a dozen voices blending into one. We are the future, and you. It chuckled softly. You're just a temporary inconvenience. Kara's vision swam, her thoughts unraveling. But she gritted her teeth, pushing herself upward, rung by rung, until at last she emerged onto the upper deck. She staggered into the corridor, panting, her pulse hammering in her ears. There, she breathed, forcing herself to move. Just a little further. The central control room loomed ahead, its massive bulkhead door sealed tight. Kara stumbled toward it, her fingers shaking as she punched in the override code. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hiss, the door slid open, and she staggered inside. The control deck was a vast, circular chamber filled with banks of consoles and holographic displays. The massive viewport at the far end was dark, stars twinkling faintly through the reinforced glass. But Kara barely registered it. Her gaze was fixed on the central control console, the heart of the ship's systems. Almost there, she whispered, stumbling toward it. If she could just reach the console, activate the self-destruct, it would all be over. The creature would be destroyed, and the frontier's edge would be nothing more than a drifting wreck. But as she reached for the controls, something cold and hard slammed into her side, sending her sprawling. Kara cried out, pain lancing through her ribs as she hit the floor, gasping for breath. "You didn't think it would be that easy, did you?" The thing wearing Hank's face murmured, standing over her. Its smile was cruel, its eyes gleaming with dark amusement. "We're not done yet, Captain." Kara struggled to push herself up, but Hank, no, the thing, grabbed her by the throat, lifting her effortlessly off the ground. She choked, her legs kicking helplessly as it squeezed, her vision going dark. "We warned you," it whispered, its breath cold against her helmet. "But you wouldn't listen. And now you'll be ours." Her mind was unraveling, slipping away into darkness. The whispers were louder now, filling her head with static, drowning out everything else. She could feel herself falling, tumbling into the void, her thoughts fracturing like glass. "No," she gasped, her voice a faint rasp. I won't." But she was losing. The thing was inside her, wrapping itself around her will, pulling her under. And then, in the depths of her mind, she heard it. A voice, soft, faint, almost lost in the storm. "Remember," it whispered. "You're not alone." Kara blinked, her breath hitching. The voice, it was familiar. It sounded like, "Lena?" she whispered, her heart clenching. The thing's grip tightened, its smile widening. "Shh, Captain, just let go." "No!" the voice shouted, louder now, stronger. "Kara, it's me, it's Lena, don't listen to it." Kara's pulse raced. She could feel the thing twisting in her mind, trying to drown out the voice, but Lena's words cut through the fog, sharp and clear. "We're still here, Kara," Lena whispered. "We're still fighting. Don't give up. Don't let it take you." And then, slowly, Kara felt it. The presence in her mind. The thing that had been clawing at her thoughts, recoiling. It was weaker now, its hold loosening. And in that moment she realized, it wasn't just her will that kept it at bay. It was them. Her crew. Their memories. Their emotions. Everything that made them human. It was the one thing this creature couldn't understand, couldn't control. "Get out!" Kara snarled, her voice low and fierce. "Get out of my head!" With a surge of strength, she tore herself free, shoving the thing back. It stumbled, its eyes widening in shock. "No!" it hissed, its voice twisting with rage. "You—" But Kara didn't let it finish. She lunged forward, slamming her fist into its chest. The thing let out a strangled gasp, its body convulsing. And then, slowly, it cracked. Black veins spiderwebbing across its skin, its form distorting. What are you?" it choked, its voice warping. "I'm human," Kara whispered. "And you made a mistake." With a final, shuddering breath, the thing shattered, its form collapsing in on itself, dissolving into a swirl of darkness that evaporated into the air. Kara staggered back, panting, her limbs trembling. It's over," she gasped, clutching her ribs. "It's finally." But then, from the shadows, a low, rumbling laugh echoed through the chamber. "Oh, Captain," the voice purred softly. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Kara froze, her blood running cold, and as she turned slowly, she saw it. A shape coalescing in the darkness, vast and towering, its eyes blazing with cold, alien light. "We're not gone," it whispered, its voice a chorus of 1,000 souls. "We're just beginning." Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. There had to be a way to end this. And then she saw it, the control console, just a few feet away, still active. "Not today," she growled, and before the creature could react, she lunged for the console, her fingers flying over the controls. "No!" the creature roared, surging forward. But it was too late. With a deafening boom, the core hummed to life, the ship's systems roaring back online. And then, with a single command, Kara activated the self-destruct. "Goodbye," she whispered. And then the world exploded in a blaze of light. When the rescue team finally arrived, Frontier's Edge was nothing more than a drifting wreck, its hull charred and shattered. But in the wreckage they found her. Captain Kara, barely alive, but breathing. Did we win?" she whispered, her voice faint. The medic nodded, his expression awed. "Yes, Captain. You did." Kara closed her eyes, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "We're still here," she murmured softly. "We're still human." And with that, she let herself drift away, her thoughts finally at peace.